Um, Welcome all to our press conference. Let me debrief you on the outcome of today's Council. First of all, I would like to welcome the adoption by ECOFIN of the agreement between the European Parliament and the Council on the recast directive on deposit guarantee schemes. It constitutes another essential instrument for strengthening financial stability and confidence for credit institutions in the European Union internal market. It preserves the coverage level of 100,000 euros per depositor and per bank, harmonizing the framework for DGSs across the European Union and ensuring a uniform high level of protection for depositors in all member states. This is a very important achievement, especially regarding the protection of depositors in those member states that have been most severely hit by the financial crisis. The guarantee will continue to be offered in the form of repayment in the event of a bank's liquidation. Depositors will also have an easier and faster access to the guaranteed amount and will be provided with better information concerning the protection of their deposits by the guarantee schemes. Moreover, the Council today adopted a regulation postponing to the 1st of August 2014 the end date in the euro area for the migration of domestic and intra-European credit transfers and direct debits in euros to the new SEPA standard-based credit transfers and direct debits. Extension of the deadline will enable banks, payment service providers and users to exceptionally and temporarily continue using existing standards alongside the SEPA standard-based schemes, given that the rate of migration needs to be raised significantly before the final end date. This will minimize disruptions that could particularly affect SMEs and consumers. We also welcome the adoption by the Council of conclusions on, first, the Commission's annual growth survey that outlines priority actions to be taken by Member States in order to ensure more effective and better coordinated policies for fostering sustainable economic growth, and B, the Alert Mechanism report, which is the starting point of the European Union's annual macroeconomic imbalances procedure. Furthermore, we discussed the preparation of the meeting of G20 finance ministers and central bank governors in Sydney, endorsing European Union terms of reference prepared by the Economic and Financial Committee. We agree that the G20 should develop ambitious strategies to support growth and jobs while we support the policy priorities agreed upon in December, which are investment, employment and trade and competition, as well as the reinforcement of international cooperation in tax matters and the fight against non-cooperative jurisdictions. The Council adopted also a recommendation to the European Parliament on the discharge to be given to the Commission for implementation of the European Union's general budget for 2012 and approved the conclusions on the budget guidelines for 2015. The Presidency considers that next year's budget should be realistic and reflect Member States' fiscal consolidation efforts, as well as their genuine needs for funding and investments to boost growth and employment. The European Central Bank briefed the Council on the first quarterly report on progress in the implementation of the single supervisor mechanism. At this point, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Danielle Nouy for taking up her duties as the first ever chairperson of the ECB Supervisory Board, as well as Mrs. Sabine Lautenschläger, recently appointed vice chairperson of the board. Now, on the single single resolution mechanism, I'm sure that you all followed the debate. We have been in open session quite carefully, so I will not dwell too much on this point. However, the Presidency welcomes the willingness of the Council to provide us the necessary space in order to explore with the European Parliament possible alternative options on the issues identified in the paper that we submitted to the Council last week. The issues we face are well known, as well as the challenges. What the Presidency takes away from today's meeting is the strong sense of urgency shared by all stakeholders and the need to find the necessary common ground upon which agreement will be reached in time for adoption during the current legislative term. And as Jeroen can confirm, the same, I feel, applied to last night's discussions regarding the IGA. You can rest assured that the Hellenic Presidency is committed to do all it can within its purview to achieve an agreement based on mutual consensus as the best way to guarantee the resolution mechanism effective and efficient operation. And we want every member state to be on board. I remain confident that with good faith and a spirit of compromise, we will reach our common objective. Thank you.
Merci, bonjour à chacune et chacun d'entre vous et de votre patience. D'abord, je voudrais dire un mot personnel de remerciement à la présidence hellénique, Yanis Nouaras qui est ici et toute son équipe, parce que à la fin de ce mandat parlementaire, et comme c'est normal, grâce aussi au très bon travail de la présidence lituanienne, nous sommes dans un moment assez névralgique où beaucoup de textes importants sont là, en cours de finalisation, et ça demande pour la présidence, pour le Parlement aussi, et pour la Commission, beaucoup de disponibilité. Donc, je remercie la présidence de cet engagement et de ce volontarisme. Je confirme l'importance du vote définitif du Conseil ce matin sur le mécanisme européen de garantie de dépôt, qui est un des éléments, une des pièces de l'architecture que j'avais présentée il y a 3 ans pour les garanties de dépôt. Ce texte-là, il a fallu 3 ans pour aboutir à un vote définitif du Conseil et du Parlement, mais c'est une bonne étape pour la protection des épargnants. À propos des textes qui sont toujours dans le pipeline, nous avons parlé rapidement ce matin. Il y a plusieurs textes qui intéressent la protection des investisseurs, UCITS, PRIPS. Il y a un texte auquel je tiens beaucoup, qui est en cours de finalisation sur le compte bancaire de base, la transparence des frais bancaires, la mobilité bancaire. C'est un texte citoyen qui donne à tout ce travail de régulation financière, parfois très technique, parfois un peu lointain aussi pour les gens, une dimension plus citoyenne. Je rappelle qu'il y a 9 millions d'Européens qui se sont vus refuser l'ouverture d'un compte bancaire. Et ça doit cesser. L'ouverture d'un compte bancaire doit être possible pour n'importe quel citoyen, dans n'importe quel pays. J'ai également appelé le Conseil, quand il aura terminé avec l'union bancaire, à se saisir sans trop tarder de la dernière proposition que j'ai faite en janvier au nom de la Commission européenne sur la structure des banques, suivant le rapport Liikanen, parce que je pense que pour les 30 plus grandes banques européennes, cette proposition, pour bien maîtriser les risques et interdire le propriety trading, est une proposition importante. Nous avons accueilli Daniel Nouy ce matin et j'ai eu l'occasion au nom de la Commission de remercier la Banque centrale européenne de son engagement pour mettre en place cette mission de supervision qui va être effective à partir de novembre et à laquelle elle se prépare très activement. J'ai également salué la bonne coopération entre la Banque centrale européenne et l'autorité européenne des banques. En tout cas, c'est un travail remarquable qui est fait et qui est très important pour la crédibilité de l'Union bancaire. Sur le mécanisme de résolution qui a été l'objet principal de la réunion de l'Eurogroupe et de l'intergouvernemental hier présidée avec beaucoup de dynamisme et de compétences par Jeroen Dijsselbloem et ce matin avec Yanis pour le Conseil ECOFIN. On a eu, vous l'avez vu d'ailleurs dans la séance publique, un état d'esprit, mais je peux vous le dire aussi pour hier, extrêmement constructif. Je l'avais senti au Parlement qu'il y a des exigences, qui n'aiment pas l'accord intergouvernemental, Le Conseil des ministres avait dit sa disponibilité. On a eu la confirmation hier et aujourd'hui de cet état d'esprit constructif. Voilà pourquoi j'ai confiance dans la possibilité d'aboutir dans les 2 mois qui viennent à un accord entre le Parlement et le Conseil des ministres sur ce mécanisme de résolution dont on a besoin pour crédibiliser l'ensemble de l'Union bancaire. Jeroen dira probablement ce qu'il doit dire des questions de financement qui ont été évoquées hier, en particulier le financement de la résolution, pour lequel nous voulons des règles claires, et puis naturellement l'ordre d'appel des différents compartiments nationaux et des ressources mutualisées, la volonté exprimée de mettre en œuvre le bail-in, de manière stricte, à quelle date, un point qui doit être fixé aussi, ce sera plus tôt que 2018, nous en discutons, mais nous sommes ouverts, si on donne au marché le temps de se préparer. Je pense aussi qu'il est logique, et c'est un souci pour les non-Eurozone members, de modalités d'entrée et de sortie dans l'union bancaire parfaitement équitable pour les pays qui voudraient rejoindre. Je veux redire que l'union bancaire, pas davantage que la zone euro, n'est un club fermé. C'est au contraire un club ouvert. Dès l'instant où ceux qui rejoignent respectent les règles. J'ai évoqué, comme beaucoup de ministres, l'idée aussi de peut-être accélérer le rythme de la mutualisation.
We also need to speed up mutualization, perhaps. This is something which we discussed with the ministers.
Voilà. Il y a beaucoup de questions ce matin qui ont été évoquées à l'ECOFIN, plutôt sur la gouvernance, le rôle respectif du Conseil et de la Commission. Nous sommes prêts à travailler avec la présidence de manière extrêmement précise et technique pour trouver les bons équilibres. Et aussi, j'ai rappelé que si on choisissait finalement de redonner à la Commission le rôle d'être l'institution qui appuie sur le bouton de la résolution, comme je l'avais proposé dans mon texte initial, je clarifierai précisément, y compris dans une déclaration, les modalités de travail interne de la Commission pour éviter toute confusion entre nos tâches traditionnelles sur la politique des aides d'État et cette mission concernant la résolution. Voilà ce que je peux dire sur les différents points. Nous avons maintenant peu de temps, beaucoup de travail technique à faire, mais on a tous les éléments. Je l'ai dit publiquement tout à l'heure devant vous. On n'aura pas d'autres éléments à la fin de l'année ou au début de l'année prochaine. En revanche, on a besoin, pour terminer cet outil, ce cadre de stabilité de l'eurozone qui intéresse d'ailleurs toute la stabilité du marché unique, de terminer rapidement et de mettre en œuvre maintenant l'union bancaire.
Merci.
I would just like to shortly debrief you on the outcome of yesterday's meeting, which was a special ministerial meeting on the intergovernmental agreement for the Single Resolution Fund. As you know, the aim of the meeting was to review the main open issues regarding the IGA, issues that have arisen since the negotiations on the IGA started in January. Members of the European Parliament participated in the meeting and filled us in on their views. I can say it was a constructive meeting in which we came closer to an agreement. We discussed the main outstanding issues, which were related to at least 5 themes. The first being the financing of resolution costs. This is about the combination and the sequencing of financing options, whether there should be flexibility in the financing options for the resolution board, and the scope of the resolution board's discretion on this. Second theme was the lending between national compartments, and particularly the related decision-making. On whose discretion is it whether lending between compartments will take place. The third issue was the consequence of late entry into the SSM/SRM, especially in terms of financial flows. So if countries were to enter at a later phase, a later stage, what kind of contribution would they have to put in and how much time would be given, etc. Part of that discussion was also, in my mind, highly theoretical, the countries leaving the SRF and how that would work. The reference, this is the fourth item, is a reference to rules on the bail-in tool. There was a strong and joint commitment to applying bail-in rules, but the question has to be answered yet how to put the bail-in as a precondition in the wording of the agreement. And that is partly political and partly a legal debate. The fifth item, the fifth theme was the burden sharing within banking groups in case of cross-border resolution. The issue there is how to take into account for each entity the relative share of the losses which gave rise to the resolution. Of course, this is only valid for banking groups in cross-border situations. These were the main issues. I think we made quite some progress despite the complexity of the issues. We were able to narrow the list down, and I think there was some convergence already there in the meeting. More technical work will have to be done because, as you may have noticed, some of these issues are quite technical. So we will come back to the IGA in the context of the special ministerial meeting in March, which will probably be on the 10th of March. And hopefully we can then come to conclusions. Most importantly, as also Yannis and Michel have pointed out, all participants were determined to reach an agreement by the end of March on the total package, which, of course, is also interconnected, SRM and IGA, in time before the end of the current parliamentary term. Now, that is not just a practical reason. There is also a reason of economic urgency. We need to put the banks right, and we need to give clarity on the banking union so the financial markets in Europe can function again and support economic growth. And that is a very strong driver for all of us to reach an agreement within some weeks. Thank you.
Last week, President Draghi made a very straight proposal for the resolution fund. He said that it should be funded well funded in 5 years, and he suggested the idea of a public backstop. Just wondering whether this proposal has been discussed and whether it is now a part of the debate and how was it discussed, if there is any consensus on that. Thank you.
In today's meeting, as you have followed from the open session, that was that's one among the many issues discussed. So, although the Greek presidency has not officially got a new mandate, we have now we have the approval of the Council to explore certain new ideas in order to find a compromise with the European Parliament. So this is one of the issues. Of course, we know that there are divergent views on this. As some member states link it with bringing forward also the filling up of the fund. So we need to explore this further and report back to the Council.
Thank you. Peter Spiegel from the Financial Times. I have one sort of follow-up on Marco's question and then a question for Mr. Dijsselbloem on a different topic. There seemed to be quite a bit of movement. We saw Minister Schäuble and Minister Urpilainen both say they are accepting of a speeding up of some kind. As you say, it's tied to a faster filling up of the fund, which is not acceptable to all. But I guess if I could ask both of you, particularly the Commission, where you see that landing zone potentially now. I mean, as Marco pointed out, Draghi has suggested 5 years. You had mentioned 7 years. Do you have an idea of where that landing zone would be and where the Parliament would accept either a time and an amount for that to happen? And President Dijsselbloem, slightly different topic, but you have talked quite frequently in the last couple of months about the need to tie flexibility in the Stability and Growth Pact to structural reforms, that if you're going to get more time and more flexibility to hit your targets, you need to do structural reforms. We've heard in the last 24, 48 hours from Rome that Matteo Renzi has a great plan for reforms, and there's been suggestions, including from Commissioner Tajani, that Italy should be allowed to breach its 3% deficit target because Renzi's coming in with these kinds of reforms. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Is that something that you would look favorably upon if Italy were to present that to you? Thank you.
Si je peux dire un mot en complément de ce qu'a dit Yanis sur
pick up on what Yanis has just said.
L'accélération du rythme de la mutualisation. Il y a deux problèmes qu'il faut bien distinguer. C'est le backstop, et je veux bien confirmer que le vice-président de la Banque centrale, Victor Constantiou, a refait le point que Mario Draghi avait fait la semaine dernière et il l'a fait dans son intervention ce matin. Et puis, ce qu'on appelle le bridge financing, c'est-à-dire le financement temporaire. Le backstop commun pour le fonds unique devrait être développé pendant la période transitoire et être opérationnel totalement à la fin de la période. Mais on doit aussi s'assurer que le fonds que nous mettons en place soit crédible from the first day, depuis le premier jour. Et donc je pense que l'utilisation du bail-in, tel que nous l'avons d'ailleurs déjà anticipé dans la loi sur la résolution pour 2016, réduira l'apport en capital par le fonds unique, mais on a l'expérience aussi qui montre que la résolution exige de la liquidité pour financer la restructuration des banques. Et nous savons que la Banque centrale pourra fournir la liquidité à court terme à une banque considérée comme solvable après la restructuration de ses actifs et sa recapitalisation. Il ne faut pas exclure qu'on ait en plus de ça besoin de liquidité. Donc, le financement temporaire devrait être réalisé, à nos yeux, par un système de garantie publique correspondant aux compartiments nationaux qui vont être progressivement mutualisés. Et voilà pourquoi cela contribuera à une mutualisation progressive du système. Voilà comment on imagine qu'on puisse assurer cette question du financement temporaire et on a actuellement évoqué l'hypothèse d'un appel au marché pour que le fonds puisse être doté des moyens dont il aura besoin aussi.
Perhaps I can just say something on both issues, because there are a couple of big issues surrounding SRM and IGA. One of them is, will the whole system be effective in terms, will it be able to take decisions in a limited amount of time, etc. The other one is, will there be enough money in the fund? Now that second issue can be addressed in different ways. Part of the solution could be to fill the fund up quicker or to mutualize it quicker. Part of it could be to lend between compartments. But part of it could also be that the fund will get its own lending facility to go to markets. That would require, while we have national compartments, national guarantees. Now, all of these elements are all trying to address the same key issue, which is, will there at all time be enough money in the fund? And especially, of course, the concern is at the beginning, when the fund is very little full, has been filled only a little. So there is that issue to address. There are different options, all which help to fill the fund, to make sure the fund has the money available. And I think we should use the time to work out these technical options. And on the basis of that, we will take a political decision on how we can deal with it. But there are different options to deal with that one big central issue. On your second question, which was definitely not on the agenda of the ministerial meeting of the IGA, which is about Italian politics, I can just say that in general terms, we have an effective way to push further budgetary reforms, dealing with budgetary issues. And at the moment, we are looking for instruments to put some leverage, some power on the reform agenda. So my plea has been, as you rightly say, to use that leverage to push forward the reform agenda. Whether that's going to happen, that kind of connection between the two in Italy, I don't know. I know what Olli Rehn said yesterday in yesterday's press conference. I think he used the word, Italy is a profoundly European country, and therefore it will take the Growth and Stability Pact and its obligations very seriously. Having said that, Olli Rehn has the ability to allow for countries to have more time, and my plea would be, if the Commissioner were to find that necessary, in any case, the Commissioner has the ability to put conditionalities onto that in terms of extra reforms. So I'm in no position, no one knows what the Italian government is going to do, and when they do have their plans, it will be up to Commissioner Rehn to evaluate their proposals first of all. And the bottom line is, Italy is a profoundly European country and will stick by and stand by its commitments.
Je voudrais juste revenir un instant sur la question de la mutualisation, de la durée de 10 années, qui en effet est longue. Les ministres l'ont jugé réaliste. Le Parlement souhaiterait faire une période plus brève. Il y a plusieurs options là dont nous devons discuter. Donc, je dis ça de manière ouverte. Soit on raccourcit cette période à 5 ans, peut-être une période intermédiaire de 7 ans, pour la mutualisation et pour l'accumulation des fonds. Soit on distingue le rythme de la mutualisation du rythme d'accumulation des fonds, et plusieurs pays ne sont pas d'accord avec cette idée. Soit on garde la même durée pour mutualisation et accumulation, mais on peut-être fait la mutualisation sur un rythme un peu différent à partir de la première année, 40%. J'ai dit ça devant le Parlement en accélérant les premières années de la mutualisation. Donc ce sont des options qui sont ouvertes et dont nous allons discuter.
Hi, right at the back. Jim Brunsden from Bloomberg News. On the backstops issue again, following the public debate, there seemed to be lots of ideas put forward as to what the best approach was there, including quite a detailed proposal from Minister Dijsselbloem. Is it possible just to go a bit further into this and know why is it that different options are being looked at and people are talking about new systems, including this borrowing approach that Minister Dijsselbloem mooted, when you have the ESM and that could potentially be a backstop for the system? Thank you.
Well, let me just briefly say that the ESM has been part of previous discussions, but there is, given the goal of the ESM, which is a crisis instrument, which therefore has to be maintained and reserved for crisis situations, at least this was the feeling among a large group of ministers, the ESM is not the right instrument to look at how we can put backstops on the fund. My second point would be that the term public backstop is not really right, because this fund is going to be financed by the sector. And also, if at one point or another there is not enough money in the fund, then the sector will still have to finance it by ex post levies. So the only issue we have to deal with, who will put the money in the fund whilst the money is still to be collected from the sector. It's pre-financing. And there are different ways to do that. And this is what we're now discussing. My objection to the term public backstop, I know it's common, everyone uses it, it's a public backstop. It sounds like we're going to put public money once again into a banking fund. So I'd just like to make the point, it's going to be paid, prepaid, ex-post paid, but paid by the financial sector. And the only issue we have to deal with, what happens if at one point there is not enough money in the fund and we have to pre-finance it. And there are different ways of doing that. And we are discussing them.
Exactly. If I may add here something, the important thing is that to have liquidity for the fund. So there are many options to satisfy this need. So we explore all these options.
Hi, Cornelia Primer from the Austrian Radio Television. Gentlemen, is the FTT dead, or is there still a chance to make this baby come to earth? Thank you.
I think there was a meeting of ministers I would say, informal today on the FTT tax. We have not a report yet. When there is enough maturity of this issue and agreement, it will be brought in the ECOFIN.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dijsselbloem, in your Eurogroup, how is the opinion making there? Has anything changed on the FTT? Is there any movement, or is it rather likely that it's never going to happen like it seems now?
No, the FTT is not discussed in the Eurogroup. It's being discussed in a group of what is called enhanced cooperation of 11 member states. And as Mrs. Stonaras just said, they had a meeting yesterday, which I briefly heard that it took place, but there's little I can say. My country is not part of that group, so I can't debrief you on that. You'll have to ask the ministers involved. But as Mr. Stonaras quite rightly said, if there is at some point an agreement or an outcome, then they will put it on the agenda of the ECOFIN. But we are in the blind, in the dark, just like you are. Well, at least I am. I don't know whether you are.
Hi there, just at the back here. Simon Marks from Market News. You know, the Parliament's been fairly clear since the beginning that the single resolution mechanism has to be completely independent, i.e. member states have no role in deciding whether or not the fund is actually accessed. Could you just maybe elaborate on what compromise the Council could make where that is concerned? I noticed during the debate there was some talk of the thresholds being changed and whether plenary would be used at a slightly different time. Thanks.
I mean, as I told you before, today's discussion was public, so there's no secret. I can tell you, and as Michel also has summarized possible areas for compromise, so I can tell you exactly my notes. From my notes, the areas for compromise that have been identified by colleagues are the following. It's the framing of the plenary role, a review of the thresholds for the involvement of the plenary and explore ideas on voting modalities, especially in the transitional period, to have a balanced solution to use the SRF. It's a possibly better framing of the Council role in order to limit its discretion and the grounds on which it can raise objections to the SRB decisions, as well as the simplification, if possible, the shortening of the decision-making process, a more framed oversight of the board over the national resolution authorities, a central role for the ECB to determine whether an institution is failing or likely to fail. However, we have recognized that the SRB should ultimately maintain a possibility to effectively influence that function too. And last but not least, we have agreed that bail-in and not bail-out is the main principle to guide our steps. That's few of the possible areas. Michel has also his own list. There's a lot of overlapping, of course.
Heureusement, c'est la même. Hein. Et sur tous ces points, je veux dire naturellement qu'il faut que on fasse des compromis. Donc il faut que le Conseil d'un côté, si le Parlement finalement doit comprendre et accepter ce que souhaite le Conseil avec cet accord intergouvernemental et qui ne lui plaît pas, d'ailleurs, qui ne plaît pas non plus à la Commission, mais si le Parlement doit accepter cet accord intergouvernemental, il faudra qu'il y ait des concessions du Conseil sur d'autres points. Et en effet, comme vous le dites, le Parlement exprime le souhait que la décision prise sur la résolution soit la plus indépendante, la plus dépolitisée possible. D'ailleurs, une question qui se pose dans plusieurs secteurs de ce débat, quand on parle de confusion, de conflit d'intérêts, il faut qu'on clarifie ça. Je pense par exemple au rôle que doit jouer la Banque centrale européenne. Nous en avons parlé ce matin pour juger qu'un établissement bancaire n'est plus viable et enclencher le processus de résolution. Il y a maintenant un consensus assez large pour que ce soit la Banque centrale qui joue ce rôle, sans exclure finalement une intervention du board. Et sur le point que vous évoquez, qui tient beaucoup au Parlement, c'est le rôle de la formation plénière du Conseil de résolution par rapport au board, par rapport au Conseil exécutif. Donc je pense qu'on peut trouver un compromis qui aille dans le sens du Parlement, c'est ce que je souhaite, s'agissant en jouant sur les seuils d'intervention, les seuils de contribution du fonds. Et donc donner plus de responsabilités en relevant certains seuils au Conseil exécutif, au board, par rapport à la formation plénière. Voilà. Ça, c'est les questions qui sont discutées et sur lesquelles j'ai promis mon aide à la présidence et au Parlement pour trouver des solutions. Il y a les modalités de vote au sein de la plénière et puis toutes les questions que Jeroen a évoquées sur le fond, le backstop, le backstop commun, en effet, plutôt que backstop, rather than a public backstop. I think common is a better word.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our press conference.